Today, let's talk about what we know about Finn's life before the movie The Force Awakens. At an extremely young age, Finn would be taken and placed in the First Order. From there, Captain Phasma would see his and all the other cadets' training all the way to deployment. As a cadet, Finn would be given the designation FN-2187. He would often serve in a squad with 3 other members nicknamed Slips, Nines, and Zeros. He would be the only one that would keep his full designation FN-2187, and he would not be given a nickname. This sets him apart from them, and he is actually seen as their leader. In fact, Finn is everything the First Order wants: smart, strong, dutiful, brave, and loyal. On every test, he would constantly score in the top 1%. His shooting and fighting skills are exceptional. As part of his training, he would also log in many hours on sanitation detail, which is why he tells Han he worked in sanitation, as every stormtrooper going through the ranks does. So no, Huffington Post, Finn wasn't a janitor. He would also show incredible leadership abilities. Captain Phasma even has him marked for leadership, and states he could be the finest stormtrooper she has ever seen. The only problem is that Finn shows empathy, a dangerous level of empathy. During simulations, whenever his teammate Slips falls behind, he would always go behind to rescue him, even if it meant jeopardizing the mission. This was something the First Order couldn't allow. They had no room for weakness. They didn't want the stronger members helping the weaker members. They wanted them to simply let them wash out. And Captain Phasma has this discussion with him, letting him know that his first priority, his first loyalty, should be to the First Order and their missions, and not to be helping his squad mates. They do not come first. And she basically lets him know that you need to stop showing this empathy. You can become one of the finest stormtroopers. You are a great leader, but you need to cut this shit out. And obviously for Finn, who has a lot of empathy, this is something really hard for him to swallow. In the weeks before Finn is deployed, he and other cadets would be put through rigorous training. Part of this training was emphasis on historical battles from the Clone Wars and some battles from before. During these lessons, he would also learn about the Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker and about an Alliance general named Han Solo. These history lessons, of course, would be extremely skewed, and Finn would learn little about galactic politics. Finn and others would also have mandatory morale sessions twice a day where they were required to watch a recorded speech from High Command, mostly General Hux. Typically, the speeches included stories on famine, unchecked alien advances throughout the Outer Rim, and brutal suppression. Included in these morale speeches would be one story of First Order victory. During these morale sessions, Finn would either not pay attention or not be feeling the way others did around him. He would also start leaving Slips behind in simulations, as Phasma told him to do, and this would absolutely disgust him. He would feel so terrible inside for leaving a fellow teammate behind, but he understood that he couldn't show any empathy, otherwise he might be washed out of the program. Or reprogrammed. As the training went on, Finn would find himself applauding or cheering, but not really feeling involved or a part of it, and not feeling the emotions other people were feeling around him. He started to just go through the motions and pretend like he was rallied up alongside his fellow soldiers. During another simulation, he ends up leaving Slips behind, and then Phasma takes him up in front of everybody, including stormtroopers, and commends him and tells him that he is the ideal stormtrooper and that more people need to take cues from him and his leadership skills. And this is something that makes Finn feel like absolute trash and embarrassed because he cannot stand what he's doing and how the mission is being put ahead of living, breathing human beings. Towards the end of their program, their training would begin to be accelerated, and through First Order training, Finn would also get rigorous hand-to-hand combat, and then weapon combat. Some of the equipment they were trained with was strong enough to resist a lightsaber. During one intensive melee training, Finn wins many bouts, and in the end shows mercy to Slips, who is injured and can't take any more beatings. Phasma again notices this and reminds him real stormtroopers have no room for sympathy. She tells him to gather his fire team, they're being deployed. When they board a Star Destroyer, Finn and the other cadets end up meeting real stormtroopers, and the stormtroopers quickly let Finn know the fact that he doesn't have a nickname and goes by his full designation means he's an outsider, and he will always be an outsider. And Finn begins to wonder if what they're saying is true and explains why he feels the way he does. Finn would then be deployed with his fire team to a mining colony in Pressey's Tumble in the Outer Rim. There they were to restore order, as agents from the New Republic had infiltrated the mining operations and were causing dissent among the miners and sabotaging equipment. Their presence was to keep the miners in line and prevent further delays. There, Finn would see just how terrified the miners were of the First Order, and he would begin to feel that something was wrong here. Why were these people so terrified of them and the First Order if they were there to restore order and peace and help them along with their job? He started to get sick to his stomach, to the point where he felt like vomiting in his helmet. What was going on? A little bit later, Phasma ends up calling for them to come to an office, and there the miners that are striking are trying to negotiate a deal with the First Order. Instead of negotiating, Phasma tells Finn and his squad mates to simply fire on the miners, something the rest of his team does without hesitation, but Finn is unable to pull his trigger. He just can't kill innocents. After the miners are fired on, Phasma declares them now officially stormtroopers. Back on the Star Destroyer, Finn doesn't celebrate with his team, and instead would do simulation after simulation to figure out why he froze in that room, and what was going on with him. When the Republic soldiers appear in these simulations, he fires on them with no problem, but when civilians enter the scenarios, he would hesitate and not fire. He saw them as innocents, not enemies, and he couldn't hurt them. Captain Phasma, unknown to Finn, would be watching these simulations, and she would be so disappointed because Finn had such the ability to be special and a leader, but the empathy and mercy he keeps showing just was holding him back. She decides that she's going to give Finn just one more chance, and that chance is going to be on Jakku. She's going to place him there with his fellow stormtroopers and see if being fired at will help him realize that mercy and empathy have no place on the battlefield. This is his final test. However, as we know, Finn would land on the planet and still refuse to fire. There, he'd see his friend Slips die, leaving a bloody handprint on Finn's helm. Returning from the mission, Phasma would tell him to submit his gun for inspection, to see if he had fired his weapon. Finn would realize that his inability to shoot innocents would be discovered, and he decided he could no longer serve in the First Order after the 23 years he spent training. Before they could discover his gun hadn't been fired and they could put him through renewal therapy, Finn ends up grabbing Poe, and they run.
Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video and subscribe for more Star Wars videos.